welcome to Something to Talk About, and thank you for having us in your living room or kitchen or for bedroom, wherever you're watching us. We are here at King's Restaurant in Timooning, and I think this is actually a timely conversation with a nonprofit organization that has been around Guam for several decades, but a larger part of a larger organization that has a presence all around the globe. And I want to introduce I'm introducing myself to you, Major Tom Stambaugh, who is with us from the Salvation Army. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad that you are here. Now, we have some Kelaguen, we have some dried beef, we have some mozzarella sticks, and there's more stuff if you want.
Awesome.
Because we are at King's after all.
Absolutely.
The king of foods. So we can nibble on this because I know you like it when we eat and
Yes,
talk. I
we're
mean,
gonna
when you're
have
sitting in someone's kitchen, it'd be crazy to have food and not say anything.
Absolutely.
Speak. Let's talk about food.
Okay.
Food is not necessarily plentiful
Right.
in many segments of our community, and the Salvation Army has been around to help fill that void.
Right.
Shall we talk about that first? I was just reading a news release that came from your friends over at Triple J, and the donations that they've recently made. Of course, the airing of the show is while we are kind of still in recovery mode from the typhoon Mangkhut. So, so please let's talk about food, the scarcity of it.
Right. Well, I mean, our stats show us that the Salvation Army provided food for about 13% of the entire population of Guam over last year. And what we do is our food pantry goes year round. It doesn't, we don't,
There's no break.
Right, and so people come, and it's canned food. I mean, we'd love to expand that with some of our local farmers to increase maybe some fresh alternatives, than just the canned food. But basically, people come, and we set up our food pantry in a way now that is more inviting. We call it client choice. So in the past, we used to pre-make canned food, and they would come
You
and
sort of just bundle it and then send it out.
But now we set it up so that it's almost like a little grocery store.
People can come and choose what
and
they
they
want.
choose what works for their family. And so
It must be psychologically, it must be a little more empowering. It feels less of a handout, I would assume.
the idea is that you want to give somebody feel like their family, right?
Sure.
You want to give them dignity and respect. Part of social work models teach us is that the more you can relate with somebody on an equal level, the more you will be able to help them because their guards are come down, and you actually have conversations about how you can really help them through not just food. And what we find in social work is food is just one element of what they're really going through.
Yeah.
Once you get past the basic necessity of eating or having food, then you can get into some deeper issues and some other things that our programs can then help.
Because everybody who is working to improve their lives or sustain their family environment wants to put food on the table. But if that's not your primary problem, then you're more likely to be less distracted.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah,
I
so
get it.
Salvation Army's early philosophy, now Salvation Army has been in existence over 150 years. Started in London, England, and basically out of the social program, seeing the down and out in London, England, our founder, William Booth, saw those, the castaways, basically, the ones that the churches didn't want anything to do with. Society kind of drove them out, and the runaways, the prostitutes, the drunkards, the people that
Or just in need, whoever it was, no
And-
matter the situation.
And so early philosophy was the 3 S's. We call them soup, soap, and salvation.
So it's faith-based.
Absolutely. So the first thing is when you interact with people, first is soup, you feed them, soap, clean up a person, and then introduce them to their faith or how they can get in touch, walk with God.
Have a relationship with God.
But if somebody
because
comes,
are you saying then that is it that people who come through there have no relationship necessarily with God, or they are in need of some sort of, I mean, it's not up to you to judge the need of salvation.
Sure.
I'm assuming that you don't come in judging people on whether they
Right.
need salvation.
Well,
but
some people may already have a faith when they come to us, but their environment, their social they're hungry, or they lost a job, they're worried about their how they're going to pay the rent, all those kind of situations. So they may have a faith, but right now there's so many compounding issues that they're facing that
Faith gets lost when you're down and out. Sometimes it's really hard to
Yeah.
to believe that there's actually somebody there that's watching you and guiding you through it when it doesn't feel like it.
Right. So
Yeah, I see.
if I
Yeah.
have food in my stomach, if I am clean, my environment's safe, my kids are safe, then we can have deeper discussions about who God is in my life and,
Yeah. Okay.
and my role of
Do
faith.
you get people though who actually reject the notion that there is a God out there, and you know what do you do if somebody just rejects the whole conversation?
Right. Well, we still feed them.
Okay.
We still love on them, and is even in the Bible teaches that people walked away from Jesus as well. So we just love on them, and hopefully we'll sow some seeds,
Yeah.
and that will open up a door of faith somewhere down the road.
I want to talk about the idea that there could be so rampant hunger, not only in the United States, which is really what we've got a lot to compare to, but just on Guam, you would think, right? We think
Right.
we're surrounded,
Right.
and I'm sure that when you got here, seeing the food as so much of our culture,
Right.
that
Right.
you could imagine that somebody could still be hungry somewhere.
Right. And that's true. I mean, number one, I find myself Guam food is delicious. The local food, we've all been able to. A lot of our employees, they all bring their, and it's just delicious. So yeah, to think that there may be some families that don't have that is kind of wildly, like, how does that happen? But I think that the thing is that for the most part, families take care of families for food, invite them over for dinner and everything. But when it comes to what they bring into their own home to cook for their families, or like today, the cost of living in Guam is very expensive. So for a family to afford to go to Payless, pay rent, pay all the things, and after your food cost bill is almost the same you're going to pay for a car payment or insurance or something, so sometimes there are times where refrigerators are barren or don't have the extra, and so food pantries like ours and other nonprofits on the island, they come see us to help restock some of those shelves, and that's exactly why we have it. And it's just not to necessarily feed people long term. It's basically to get somebody over a period of need.
So it's really sort of emergency food supply. It's not a supply that somebody can actually, bank on
Yeah.
every several weeks or something like
Right.
that.
We allow them to come. We say about every 3 months, the families to come back. But it's just so it's fair across the board that those who really need it can come in. And
Do you have? How do you keep tabs?
our intake process, our family social center, whenever they come in, their intake, and we have a way to track it through our models. Our
Is
computer.
there like a requirement that you have to meet a certain financial requirement?
We have a requirement. I mean, we usually never really reject anyone who comes in
yeah.
for food, but we do look at their income, make sure that those who are in the house, that we verify that we're just doing proper intake for the family, so that we know that they're getting what their
Yeah.
family needs, that kind of thing.
Is it hard to keep the stock up, the supply going? Is
It
it difficult here?
It is. Well, like right now, we're getting an influx of donations because of the hurricane, and we're in disaster service mode right now. But I would think by next week we'll get back in the normal intake and get people getting back into the normal routine of things. And so like for the summer months when the kids aren't in school, our food bank is very busy. So peanut
That's-
butter and all
yeah.
those things that kids are going to eat,
Yeah. That's what they say. I mean, that is a real concern when you talk to the Department of Education. You realize that some of these children rely on these meals. Some of these families rely, and then when summer break or Christmas break or Easter break
Right.
comes along,
Yeah.
That's not an option and available to them any longer. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to put the food on the table.
It is.
It's not something that we see all the time.
Right.
And I think Guam is also seeing for the first time, and it has been over several years now, that we've actually watched people panhandle.
Mm-hmm.
And they look like us. They're, people we see roaming in the neighborhoods, and you see them, several kids in tow.
Right. Yeah,
you
no,
know.
it's true. I think for the panhandling, I have a different opinion about how that process should be or not be. Or
Okay. You know what we'll do? We'll take a break so that we can eat some of this Kelaguen. Because
Absolutely.
you said Guam food is good, so prove it.
Yeah.
Do you like spicy food, though?
I do.
Okay. I don't think this is spicy, but we could arrange for something spicier. Yeah, we'll talk about your views about panhandling, something that has really been a surge in this community, and it's come to this point over several years of us getting used to seeing people out there with signs saying, "I'm in need."
Sure.
At every intersection.
Right.
It's pretty baffling.
Right,
It's
it
stunning
is.
at the least. All right, we're talking to Major Tom from the Salvation Army. My very first interview with the Salvation Army, so I'm pretty stoked about this. We're gonna take a break for food. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Something to Talk About. Major Tom Stambaugh from the Salvation Army joining me today at the table of kings. We've got fruit and other stuff, so we're just going to be munching along as we talk about, well, the shortage of food, which feels, I am sure that there's a measurable amount of guilt in the community when we talk about people who are without. And right now, as we are seeing those who have been devastated because they don't have the resources,
Right.
sort of being fished out of a storm. You see the numbers. I mean, the sheer numbers of people who responded to the call to seek shelter.
Right.
It says a lot about,
Right.
says a lot about the community and those who are impoverished or those who are in need. So,
Yeah. So for our team, we've been doing meals at the Estumbo Gym the past couple of days, and we have tomorrow as well, today and tomorrow to do as well. But what we're seeing is, it's just a basic hot meal, but people are very appreciative of it, and to us, it's just a natural part of what we do is just serve. And right now, we're pulling it out of our own resources. We're not being,
you're not on a drive necessarily.
Yeah, we're not being reimbursed by the government or anything like that. We're stretching our dollar as much as we can to help as much, maximize our own donations. So, but we're seeing a lot of those families kind of regrouping and trying to figure out what their next, and I know our friends at Homeland Security and the governor's office trying to find housing and those kind of things to get some type of normal life again. And so,
yeah, that's ultimately what everybody strives for, is to have a normal life. And I wanted to get back to something that you said about having your own ideas about people in desperate need, that they have to put their dignity behind them and show their faces on the street.
Right.
Signs basically begging for
sure.
food and resources.
Sure. Typically I grew up as a poor kid myself, so knowing that, so I've been on the receiving end of food boxes as a kid, and now I'm in a position to be able to organize something to help a community have food. And so one of the things we feel about the panhandling, of course, is that if a family is in desperate need, panhandling is supposed to be something to help you get a dry spell as you're moving on to the next thing. Panhandling should not be a full-time position.
It should be like an interim transition
Yeah.
sort of thing.
And typically most people who will see a family out and they have their sign to give, and if you see them for a month and then they're gone and they've moved on with life, then panhandling worked for them, right? Because they gave them the cash they needed to get over whatever it was. But if it's a habitual thing and you see the same faces, the same things, and what we do as Salvation Army is because sometimes we'll get calls from donors or the people in the community asking us, what's Salvation Army doing about the panhandlers we keep seeing, and their kids are out there. So we've gone out and we've made touch points with them and let them know what programs are offered, our housing programs that are offered, rapid rehousing, the grants that we have through ESG grants. So a lot of the folks that are out there that we've seen beyond a month plus have been visited by one of our...
Oh, that's good to know, because
Yeah.
it feels so helpless. Sometimes we do see the same people out there, in the villages, and it's really tough because you want to give, but do you find that people are reluctant to do so if they see them out for what's the span of time where it looks like it's habitual?
Yeah, I mean, for me, for my own opinion, is anything after a month would be now it's become part of what
Okay.
they do to survive.
This is the way that you're living.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if there are issues where, and there are a number of great organizations on the island that will help for like domestic violence issues, sheltering issues. So people have the means to get off of the street and find resources if they choose.
They have to take advantage of it.
But if the community is giving and the people are receiving after a month's time, then it becomes a form of income.
Sure.
And
Nobody wants to see that.
Right.
Nobody wants to see you thriving on people's goodness
Right.
and you taking advantage of it.
right.
I didn't know what your history was, and I was going to ask you about where you came from and all of that. You've been here for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I've been on Guam all over 2
Were,
years
were
now.
you brought here by the Salvation Army? Is this like a duty assignment?
Yeah.
Because the structure looks military.
It is paramilitary.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's social paramilitary.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Where did you come from?
Well, I'm a born back east Pittsburgh kind of guy, so yes, I'm a Steeler fan. So don't hold it against me. The thing is, when you're born in Pittsburgh, they won't let you leave the hospital unless you sign off that you'll be a Steeler fan for life.
Oh, okay.
So-
So it's in your blood.
Yeah. So
All right. You
so
made the vow.
It's
at
on the
birth.
birth certificate,
Okay.
Steeler fan. Yeah.
All right, and then it would be shame if you do
Yes,
not. All
yeah,
right, all
yeah.
right. No self-respecting person from Pittsburgh is not a Steelers
Yeah,
fan.
you cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, don't
yeah.
even admit it if
Yeah,
you
you
aren't.
can't. Yeah,
Okay.
right. You
All
can't be a Cowboy fan either because we had so many battles between the Raiders and the Cowboys
Yeah.
in the '70s that
Yeah.
you can't even
You
talk
can't
about the
even
Cowboys.
pretend.
Right.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
good. Let the
so-
trash talking continue. so you grew up in Pittsburgh. What's the story? Is it the fact that you came from poverty that has
Yeah, I
compelled
mean,
you or motivated?
I grew
you?
up in alcoholism home,
Your
broken
dad
home.
or your mom?
My dad was an alcoholic. After 6, my mom and him split. I had a stepfather come in, same kind of behavior, more violent. So we would run when he would drink. My mom was beat up, whatever. We were tossed around like
And you
rag dolls.
were all before the age of 10?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. We were so.
yeah.
Before we were all worked, there was no so childhood innocence was ripped from us, and it
early
was
on.
this is life right now. We need to do what we can. So, but for our family, we would collect cans. We would do stand out of a grocery store and ask if we could push carts to the car for the people, and they'd give you a quarter, and I'd bring home bread for my mom. You know, we were an Italian family, so it's everything about you work for it, and so you don't really don't ask. You know, very rare do you ask. You just work for it, or you go without. And so my mom would go nights without eating, and she would make sure the kids had food. And I think a lot of people resonate with that. They probably remember their family doing the same. But family violence is real. Domestic violence is real. All those things happen to families, and so it's so interesting the paradigm that God called me into ministry through the Salvation Army. It's my church. It's where I found the Lord. It's where I found my connection, and so throughout the years, it's been God called. So Salvation Army officers, we're ordained pastors. We have congregations. We run. So anyone can come to our church. You don't have Sunday best, just come. God does not care what you're dressed in. Just come. He's concerned about what's going on inside, right?
How does that happen? When people say that, it's like Salvation Army allowed me, to find God. You had not a lot going toward that direction.
Right.
How do you defy what would have naturally become of you, knowing this was your life,
Right.
all you knew, right?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, the mystery of how.
How you come out of it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we always talk about intersections where when God meets somebody, an intersection in their life. And that's what happened. Salvation Army was the door for me to find that. And then I found my home there. And throughout the history, as a kid growing up in the Salvation Army.
I think it makes a big difference when you come from it and then you have the compassion or the empathy for
Sure.
people who are in it, especially children. I think it's
Yeah.
probably more sensitive. So the food, is it a food bank? Is that what you kind of call it, or a food?
Yeah, it's our client choice program, but it's the food
it's a food bank.
Yeah.
And so donations are accepted all year round.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So just so you know, they're not just the bell ringers at Christmas.
No.
They're not. Where does all that money go in the kettle?
Great question. So the Salvation Army, that's our biggest fundraiser of the year, is the kettles.
You can't get through a Christmas season without the sound of that outside a store.
Right.
It's part of the landscape.
It is, and
Okay.
even in the States, it's the same.
Yeah.
But really, what happens is that is because we understand, because we do over 2,000 kids for toys for the holidays. We do food boxes for all the families we intake. And then what happens is after Christmas is done, that money goes into buying food for the food bank, our social programs that need something. So all the money, so every dime that goes into those boxes, that goes in our kettles, stay local. So if we can raise $70,000 this year, for example, that's our goal. Then that's 70 grand that goes back into the community through Christmas and into January and into the spring.
Good to know. Good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
Major Tom, I'm pretty sure everybody's made the song about this crack about the song, not new to him. Go ahead.
Ground
Good,
control.
Ground control. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's very nice to meet you, and thank
Nice
you
to
for
meet you.
participating. I
Yeah,
appreciate
I'd love to come back.
it. Well, we will always have you back. There's no question about that. And thank you for joining us out there in TV land. We'll see you on the radio. Thank you for joining us on Something to Talk About.